So imagine you were about to break ground on a massive $3 billion offshore wind farm.
Oh, wow. Okay, big scale.
Yeah, exactly. The permits are signed, all the financing is secured, and, the press releases are already out.
Right.
But suddenly, during this routine survey, you discover unexploded World War II bombs buried directly under your proposed construction site.
Oh, no. Yeah, operations just freeze immediately.
Completely freeze, and every single day of delay is costing hundreds of thousands of dollars.
At least.
Right. So who is responsible for safely removing them? And, more importantly, who absorbs the financial hit for that delay?
Well, and the funny thing is, the answer doesn't actually come from the engineers.
No.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. The answer lies with the contracting and procurement team.
Absolutely.
So welcome to our deep dive. Today, we are looking at something that functions as sort of the secret playbook for how massive global infrastructure projects actually survive contact with the real world.
Yeah, for you listening, we are unpacking the CMC Project Contracting and Procurement Competency Framework 2026 Rev 1.
Which is quite a mouthful.
It is, yeah. But it's a brilliant document to dig into, honestly, because to really understand why this framework matters, we have to rethink the entire concept of contracting and procurement, or C&P.
Right, because I think a lot of people outside the industry assume C&P is just, a giant corporate shopping trip.
Exactly, like you need steel, they buy steel.
Yeah.
But it is so much more than that. It's a strategic lever. I mean, C&P controls literally all third-party spend for goods, materials, and services on these mega projects.
Crazy to think about.
It is. It's the financial and operational heart of creating any new business asset. It basically dictates the entire value chain.
From, mitigating the risk of those unexploded bombs to ensuring the daily operations run smoothly decades down the line.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because what we're really looking at here is a comprehensive roadmap, right?
Yeah.
It's a career life cycle designed for professionals ranging from a junior contracts engineer all the way up to a chief commercial officer.
Which is a huge gap to bridge.
Right, and the sheer scale of C&P is staggering. So how does an individual actually measure their ability to handle all of this without just, getting completely overwhelmed?
Well, that is exactly where the framework becomes incredibly practical. Rather than just being this theoretical textbook, it operates on this three-step engine.
Okay, what's step one?
Step one is the reality check. You review the job competence matrix. You basically look at your specific role and identify your gaps based on a really rigorous set of competencies.
It's like figuring out exactly where you are on the map before you even start driving.
Precisely. But step two is where, honestly, most corporate manuals completely fail, and this one succeeds.
Oh, really? How so?
It mandates a high-quality discussion with a supervisor. You have to establish development areas and formally record them in an individual development plan, an IDP.
Okay, so it actually forces a dialogue.
It forces a dialogue, yeah. And finally, step three is taking action. But it heavily prioritizes on-the-job learning.
Not just reading about it.
Exactly. It operates on the philosophy that you learn by doing, and that's accelerated by structured self-learning, like utilizing specific CMC video tutorials or PDF guides, and then it caps it all off with formal training.
Now, when it comes to measuring that ability, the framework grades professionals on 3 levels, right? Knowledge, skill, and mastery.
That's right.
And I want to put a pin in this because, honestly, looking at this from the outside, I was a little bit confused.
Oh, how come?
Well, in a lot of corporate environments, skill and mastery are basically used interchangeably. But the framework draws a very hard line between the 3.
It absolutely does.
So, reading through the text, I actually came up with kind of a mechanical analogy for this. Let me see if this tracks for you.
I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so let's look at it like a commercial kitchen. Knowledge is knowing how to read the recipe and understanding what all the ingredients are.
Right. You know the basics.
Yeah. You can do the prep work, but you need the head chef nearby to answer questions.
Makes sense.
Then, skill is being able to actually cook the meal perfectly during a busy dinner rush.
Okay, yeah.
You can solve common problems, like if a steak is overcooked, because you just know your territory inside and out.
Right, you're competent in the expected chaos.
Exactly. But mastery is when the supplier completely fails to deliver the chicken, half the stoves break, the power flickers, and you still manage to invent a Michelin star vegetarian dish on the fly.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. I really like that.
Does it fit the text?
It does, perfectly. Because the framework literally defines mastery as the ability to adapt practices from completely different markets or countries for use in your own.
So bringing in outside solutions.
Yes. It's diagnosing and creatively solving significant, complex, non-routine problems. Skill handles the expected friction of a project. Mastery handles the unprecedented chaos.
And what's interesting is that you can't achieve that mastery just by, memorizing a bunch of legal text, right?
Not at all. And what's fascinating here is that the framework establishes this whole behavioral foundation that has to operate alongside the technical one.
Oh, right. The leadership stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it explicitly demands leadership attributes, things like authenticity and growth, collaboration. And that's coupled with behavioral imperatives,
Like what?
like moving with speed and simplicity and maintaining a relentless commercial mindset.
Well, let's explore that commercial mindset for a second because, you could be a walking encyclopedia of contract law, right?
Sure.
But if you treat a contract purely as a legal weapon rather than a business tool, you're going to grind a multi-million-dollar project to an absolute halt.
Exactly. A commercial mindset means understanding that the ultimate goal isn't just to win every single argument against a contractor.
Right.
The goal is to successfully build the asset while protecting your organization's financial return. It's all about value delivery, not just, blind risk avoidance.
All right. Okay, so if we follow the chronological life cycle of a project, long before we start arguing with contractors, where does a C&P professional actually begin?
Well, the framework starts with understanding business and project development.
And I have to admit, I was kind of geeking out over the sheer scale of the physical risks they have to account for before a single shovel hits the dirt.
It's massive.
We talked about the UXO, right? The
Yeah.
Unexploded Ordnance Identification Surveys. But the framework also lists seismic hazard assessments, hydrological studies, land use, and zoning advisory.
Yeah, it's exhausted.
You are basically mapping out every possible way the Earth itself could ruin your project.
You really are. But the true complexity comes in how the C&P professional has to seamlessly pivot from those physical ground-level surveys to these massive, abstract financial structures.
Right, the money side.
Exactly. They have to master a methodology called front-end loading, or FEL.
Okay, yes, I saw FEL 1, 2, and 3 mentioned all throughout the sources. Can you break down how that actually works in practice?
Absolutely. So front-end loading is essentially a gate-based decision-making process used in these big capital-intensive projects.
Gate-based meaning you can't move forward until you pass the current phase.
Exactly. So FEL1 is the conceptual phase. Basically, is this project even a good idea?
Right.
FEL2 is pre-feasibility. Let's look at the rough engineering and cost estimates.
Okay.
Then FEL3 is the detailed feasibility phase. This is where you lock in the exact scope, the schedule, and the definitive cost estimates. A project literally cannot pass the financial investment gate without C&P locking down those estimates in FEL3.
Wow. And to lock down those estimates, the framework points out that they have to navigate some incredibly complex revenue frameworks, too.
Oh, yeah.
It mentions power purchase agreements, PPAs, and offtake agreements. How do those actually function to secure a project?
Well, let's go back to your offshore wind farm example.
Okay.
You can build the most efficient wind farm in the entire world, but if the local energy grid's prices fluctuate wildly, your revenue is totally unpredictable.
Right. And no major bank is going to loan you $3 billion based on a guess.
Exactly. So the C&P team helps structure a power purchase agreement. This is a long-term contract where a buyer, say, a massive tech company that's looking to power its data centers.
Oh, sure.
They agree to buy your electricity at a fixed, guaranteed rate for, the next 20 years.
So the PPA acts as the guarantee.
Mhm.
It proves to the bank that the money will flow back in.
Precisely.
So C&P is quite literally building the economic scaffolding of the project.
They are. And once that scaffolding is in place, you have to transition into formulating the actual procurement strategy.
Right, because you have all this data, you have your funding, but how do you actually translate that into hiring contractors without just getting taken advantage of?
Exactly. And that involves deciding on the contract structure itself. The framework highlights this big difference between using an EPC lump sum contract versus a cost-plus contract.
Unpack the mechanics there for us.
Yeah.
How does an EPC contract actually shift risk?
So EPC stands for engineering, procurement, and construction. If you use an EPC lump sum strategy, you are essentially going to a massive contractor and saying, here are our exact requirements for this facility. You design it, you buy the materials, and you build it, and we will pay you exactly $1 billion.
Just a flat rate.
Right. In this scenario, you have shifted almost all the execution risk onto the contractor. If the price of steel suddenly skyrockets or, their labor force goes on strike.
The contractor absorbs that extra cost, not you.
Exactly.
But I imagine that kind of peace of mind doesn't come cheap.
Oh, it doesn't. Contractors aren't foolish, right? They will build a massive risk premium into that $1 billion price tag.
Sure, they're covering their own bases.
Right. Now, on the flip side, you could use a cost-plus strategy.
Which means?
This is where you agree to pay the contractor for all their actual expenses, so labor, materials, plus a guaranteed profit margin on top of that.
Okay, so if steel prices drop, I actually save money. But if the project takes twice as long, I'm the one footing the bill for all that extra labor.
Exactly. The owner retains the risk, but they avoid paying the contractor's massive risk premium. So the C&P professional has to analyze the specific market conditions and the project's complexity to decide which strategy to actually deploy.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. As you move through these early phases of the framework, it operates exactly like a funnel.
A funnel? How so?
Well, you start with these massive overarching questions like, how does a hurricane affect our global supply chain? Or how do we structure a 20-year revenue guarantee?
Right.
And then you slowly narrow it down into absolute precision.
Yes, I see what you mean. It shifts from strategy to systems.
Exactly. Because once you've decided on the strategy, you have to execute it through these systems. Like the framework lists managing ITB, ITT, and RFP packages.
Very important acronyms there.
Right. And for the listener who might not live in procurement spreadsheets all day, an RFP is a request for proposal.
Right.
It's essentially how a company formally goes out to the market and says, here is our highly detailed problem. How would your company solve it? And exactly how much will you charge us?
Yes, and the ITB, the invitation to bid, is similar, but it's usually focused purely on price when the solution is already clearly defined.
Got it.
And managing those systems requires incredible discipline. I mean, you are evaluating massive tenders, managing pre-qualification, and eventually handling the entire back end.
Like invoicing and stuff.
Invoicing, payment control, managing claims, and contract closeout. You are literally taking a macroeconomic strategy and translating it into a micromanaged filing system.
But to navigate that journey, especially when you have multiple international contractors, varying local laws, billions of dollars on the line.
It's a lot.
You can't just rely on customized ad hoc agreements written from scratch every time, right? You need a standardized, universally understood language. And I saw the framework dedicates a massive section to something called the FIDIC color books, specifically the red, yellow, and silver books. What exactly is this color-coded system?
So FIDI stands for the International Federation of Consulting Engineers. They publish what are widely considered the gold standard template contracts for international construction and engineering projects.
Okay.
Because they are universally understood, contractors and financiers all over the world know exactly how risk is allocated just by looking at the color of the book.
Break those colors down for us. What's the red book?
The red book is the traditional construction contract. This is used when the employer, so the owner of the project does almost all of the design work, and the contractor is simply hired to build it.
Makes sense. And the yellow book?
The yellow book is the planned and design build contract. This is where the employer provides the performance requirements, but the contractor is responsible for both designing and building the facility to meet those specific requirements.
Okay. And finally, the silver book.
The silver book is the EPC or turnkey contract we discussed earlier. Right. The contractor assumes total responsibility for the design and execution and basically hands over a fully operational facility ready to just turn the key.
Now, the level of rigorous detail the framework requires here is pretty intense. A professional operating at the mastery level isn't just reading like a 2-page summary of the red book.
Definitely not.
They are diving into the exact granular clauses to solve problems. Let's look at Clause 18, which deals with exceptional events.
A very popular clause recently.
I bet. What actually happens when a Category 5 hurricane hits your site or a global pandemic just shuts down all the ports?
Well, Clause 18 acts as the legal pressure valve. Historically, this concept was called force majeure.
Right, acts of God, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It dictates exactly what happens when an event occurs that is completely outside the control of either party. It outlines whether the contractor is entitled to an extension of time, and more critically, whether they are entitled to additional payment.
So it prevents the unexpected from immediately resulting in a breached contract.
Yes, it keeps things moving legally.
And that ties directly into Clause 20. right, which deals with employers and contractors' claims.
It does.
Because if you've ever watched a massive new airport or a huge renewable energy plant being built, and you've wondered how a multi-billion-dollar delay is resolved without everything just falling into a decade of lawsuits.
It's usually Clause 20.
Right, so how does that clause actually keep the chaos at bay?
It works by turning an emotional, chaotic argument into a predictable, mathematical process.
Mathematical.
Yeah. So Clause 20 usually dictates that if a contractor believes they are entitled to extra time or money, they must give formal notice within a very strict time frame.
How strict?
Often 28 days from when they became aware of the event. If they fail to give notice within those 28 days, they forfeit their right to the claim entirely.
Wow. So it forces the issue out into the open immediately.
Yes.
You can't just wait until the project is totally finished and then hand the owner a surprise bill for an extra $50 million.
Exactly. It forces real-time transparency. But, even with strict timelines, disputes on projects of this scale aren't just a possibility, they're an absolute certainty.
Yeah.
Which is why the framework also requires mastery of the DAB.
The DAB, the Dispute Adjudication and Avoidance Board. How does that differ from just, suing someone and going to court?
Well, going to court or international arbitration halts progress and completely destroys relationships. The DAB is a panel of independent, impartial experts appointed at the very beginning of the project.
Oh, from day one.
From day one. They visit the site regularly, they read the reports, they intimately know the project's unique challenges.
So they act kind of like real-time referees on the field, rather than judges reviewing tape 5 years after the game is already over.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, they can provide informal assistance to resolve disagreements before they calcify into formal claims.
And if a claim does happen?
If a formal dispute does arise, they issue a binding decision quickly, allowing the work to just continue.
Okay, so FAI gives us the ultimate rulebook. The math works, the clauses are airtight, the referees are on the field.
Right.
But what happens when the problem isn't on a spreadsheet? What happens when a supplier's internal network gets hacked? Or a subcontractor cuts corners on environmental regulations?
Well, that is exactly where the framework pivots from legal text to human leadership.
It's a crucial pivot, really.
It is. Because a CMP leader has to see non-financial risks just as clearly as they see a budget overrun. The framework explicitly mandates proficiency in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
It covers ESG, environmental, social, and governance principles, and it demands cybersecurity and data privacy awareness.
Which totally reflects the reality of modern infrastructure. I mean, a multi-billion-dollar project is incredibly vulnerable to digital disruptions.
Absolutely.
A single compromised vendor portal could expose the proprietary designs of your entire facility. And on the ESG front, a supplier's poor labor practices or environmental negligence instantly becomes your company's front-page reputational risk.
It does.
Yeah.
And to ensure you actually know how to manage these modern complexities, the framework provides a very practical checklist for formal learning.
Right.
It basically tracks your experience and maps it to highly recognized industry certifications.
Yeah, if you are listening and looking to upskill in this space, the framework really validates specific paths. Like, it highlights the CIPS diplomas levels 2 through 5, which is the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply.
Very prestigious.
It mentions NEVI for public procurement environments and the NCMA CPCM certification, the Certified Professional Contracts Manager.
It literally gives you the blueprint to build a globally recognized resume.
It really does. And all of that learning, all of those certifications and experiences, they culminate in the ultimate evolution within the framework, right? The Contract Management Center of Excellence, or COE.
Yes, the COE.
The absolute boss level of the framework. What does a professional actually do when they reach the COE?
Well, at this level, you transcend managing a single contract or even managing a single mega project. You move into advising the entire organization.
Like C-suite level.
Exactly. You are translating the company's highest level goals into a holistic, standardized contract management strategy. You assess the organization's current maturity, you design target operating models, and you utilize deep systems thinking.
Systems thinking, meaning you aren't just looking at the procurement department in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
You are analyzing how the mechanics of procurement dynamically interact with finance, engineering, legal, and daily operations, all at the exact same time.
Yes. You are breaking incredibly complex organizational bottlenecks into manageable components. You essentially become the architect of how the company does business with the outside world, driving continuous improvement and advising the C-suite on actual market realities.
Wow. So what does this all mean? When we zoom out and look at the CMC Project Contracting and Procurement Competency Framework 2026 Rev 1 as a whole, it's clear that it isn't just a corporate checklist to keep HR happy.
Not even close.
It is the invisible scaffolding holding up the modern world. Whether it's managing the physical threat of unexploded ordnance, locking in 20 years of revenue with a PPA, utilizing an EPC strategy to shift risk, or enforcing the 28-day mathematical precision of FIDIC's Clause 20.
Yeah.
C&P professionals are the ones turning highly ambitious, highly vulnerable blueprints into physical reality.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying ethos of this entire document is that theoretical knowledge is useless until it is systematically applied.
Right, theory isn't enough.
Exactly. That is why the engine starts with honest self-assessment and demands concrete on-the-job action. It's why the behavioral imperatives demand speed and a commercial mindset over bureaucratic delay.
Makes total sense.
The framework exists to turn legal and financial understanding into tangible, executed value in the real world.
And it leaves us with one final, I think, really provocative thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
We talked about how the framework defines mastery, right?
Yeah, bringing in outside solutions.
Right. It's not just being the best at executing your specific job in your specific sector. It's the ability to adapt practices from completely different markets or countries.
Right.
Well, in an increasingly globalized, unpredictable world, the ultimate skill for the future might not be mastering your own industry's rulebook.
Interesting.
The real mastery is having the vision to borrow the rulebook from an entirely different industry to solve a problem that absolutely no one in your sector saw coming.
I love that.
Yeah. Think about that the next time you drive past a massive construction site and wonder how it all actually comes together. Until next time, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Download the free PDF presentation and competency tracker from our website. See the links in the description. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see you next time.